Today, we're diving deep, and I mean deep, into one of the planet's most bizarre and, frankly, terrifying natural phenomena. It's a structure that literally grows beneath the polar ice, an absolutely beautiful and incredibly deadly spectacle of nature's power.
Just try to picture this, an icy tendril, like a stalactite made of pure death, reaching down from the sea ice and instantly freezing everything it touches on the ocean floor. We're talking about a phenomenon so powerful, it leaves behind this frozen graveyard of starfish and sea urchins stopped dead in their tracks.
Now, I know this sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but it's a very real thing called a brinicle. And understanding it, well, that reveals some incredible secrets, not just about our planet's climate, but maybe even about how life itself got started.
So how in the world does this icy structure even form? We're about to get into the paradox of how it's created and the destruction it causes, a process that just silently unfolds in the dark, frigid depths of the polar seas.
Okay, so what exactly is it? A brinicle is basically an inside-out icicle. Yeah, you heard that right. Instead of water dripping down and freezing on the outside layer by layer, this thing grows as a tube of ice forms around a core of sinking, super cold and ridiculously salty water.
But hold on, how does something like this form in an environment that's, well, already frozen? The answer is pretty cool, and it all has to do with the weird way that salt water turns into ice.
It all kicks off with a process called brine rejection. See, when seawater freezes, the water molecules want to form these neat, pure ice crystals. And to do that, they literally push the salt and other gunk out of the way.
So where does all that salt go? It doesn't just disappear. It gets super concentrated into this slushy liquid that gets trapped in little channels and pockets inside the sea ice. And this new liquid, this brine, is way denser and has a much, much lower freezing point than regular seawater.
So it really breaks down into 4 key steps. First, the seawater freezes, pushing the salt out. Second, that salt gets packed into a super dense brine. Third, because this stuff is so heavy, gravity just pulls it down through cracks in the ice. And then finally, as it starts leaking into the ocean below, it is so unbelievably cold that it instantly freezes the less salty water it touches. And bam, you've got the icy tube of a Brinicles forming.
All right, let's follow this thing on its deadly journey to the seafloor. The physics behind this are all about massive, massive temperature differences. First, you've got the air up top. We're talking ridiculously frigid polar air that can drop to a mind-boggling minus 40 degrees Celsius. This is what's supercooling the sea ice from above. And that creates this huge thermal clash with the ocean water underneath, which is hanging out at a relatively stable minus 2 degrees Celsius, right at its own freezing point. Now here's the craziest part. The brine itself, which has been chilled by that frigid air from above, can hit an incredible minus 20 degrees Celsius. It's still a liquid, but it is way, way colder than the freezing point of the ocean it's sinking into. So that extreme cold difference, that's the engine. That's what grows the ice tube downwards. As that freezing cold plume of brine sinks, it just continuously freezes the ocean water that it comes into contact with, extending the brinicle, meter by meter, all the way down to the seabed. For any of the slow-moving critters on the seafloor, like starfish or sea urchins, well, it's pretty much a death sentence. They're just not fast enough to escape. This web of ice spreads out and encases them, and the combo of the insane thermal shock and the super salty water is just instantly fatal. But here's where the story takes a really fascinating turn. The story of the Brinicle isn't just about death. In a strange twist, it's also connected to the very origins of life. Scientists actually call Brinicles inverse chemical gardens. Okay, so think about a normal icicle, right? It's solid ice and it grows from the outside in. A brinicle is the complete opposite. It's a hollow tube that grows from the inside out, powered by all the chemical and temperature differences between its salty core and the ocean around it. You know, for decades, the leading theory for where life got its start has been these fiery, hot, deep sea vents. But brinicles, they present a totally different and frankly opposite cold emergence theory. Instead of intense heat, they offer these stable, cold, protected environments where some scientists think the first complex molecules actually had a better shot at forming. Think of the Brinicles' icy wall almost like a primitive cell membrane. It creates a barrier, separating the unique chemistry of the brine inside from the ocean outside. This setup makes a perfect, tiny, protected laboratory, concentrating all the key ingredients needed for the very first building blocks of life to start assembling themselves. So this bizarre structure might hold clues to the very beginning of life. But the same process that creates it is also absolutely fundamental to the health of our entire planet right now. You see, a brinicle is basically a tiny, visible preview of a massive planetary process. That sinking of cold, salty water that forms it, that's the very same engine that drives the thermohaline circulation, the great ocean conveyor belt that moves heat all around the globe and regulates our entire climate.
But, and this is a big but, that entire system is under threat. Climate change is warming the poles way faster than the rest of the planet, and as you can see here, Arctic sea ice is disappearing at a really alarming rate.
And this has direct consequences. As the poles warm up, the conditions you need for brinicles, that really thick ice and that huge temperature difference, they're just becoming rarer and rarer. The engine that creates them is basically sputtering out.
And that leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought. We call it the finger of death, right? But maybe its disappearance is a symptom of a much bigger breakdown in the planetary systems that we all depend on. The loss of this killer might just signal a far, far greater threat to life on Earth.